Hey guys, according to Joe Sharkey, the author of Word for Word, The Case Against the Nazis, How Hitler's Forces Planned to Destroy German Christianity, not the institution of the church, but German Christianity, I quote him, the chilling testimony of crimes against humanity by the Nazi regime in Hitler's Germany had been on the historical record since the Nuremberg war crimes trials in 1945 and 1946, but any criminal prosecution, and especially one as mammoth as the case against the Nazi Germany, consists of far more than public testimony in court. The Nuremberg trials were also built on many millions of pages of supporting evidence, documents, summaries, notes, and memos collected by investigators. One of the leading United States investigators at Nuremberg, General William J. Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan of the OSS, the CIA's precursor, collected and cataloged trial evidence in 148 bound volumes of personal papers that were stored after his death in 1959 at Cornell University. This is important. In 1999, Julie Seltzer Mendel, a law student from Rutgers University whose grandmother survived at the Auschwitz death camp, read them. Under the Nuremberg Project, a collaboration between Rutgers and Cornell, she has edited the collection for publication on the Internet. The first installation, published last week, includes a 108-page outline prepared by OSS investigators to aid Nuremberg prosecutors. The outline, The Persecution of the Christian Churches, summarizes the Nazi plan to subvert and destroy German Christianity, which it calls an integral part of the National Socialist scheme of world conquest. Goes along with everything else I've said. An excerpt from the report written by General William J. Donovan of the OSS, which the CIA would become, he says, according to Bader von Schirach, the Nazi leader of the German Youth Corps, that would later be known as the Hitler Youth, he quotes, the destruction of Christianity was explicitly recognized as a purpose of the National Socialist movement from the beginning, though consideration of expedience made it impossible for the movement to adopt this radical stance officially until it had consolidated its power. Did you hear that? He said, this is the leader of the Youth Corps. The destruction of Christianity was explicitly recognized as a purpose of the National Socialist movement from the beginning. This is an official report. Hitler wanted to remove. This is an official report collected to try the Germans. Written by the precursor to the CIA, the OSS. Hitler wanted to remove Christianity from his empire once he established domination. And people actually think he's still a Christian of some sort. People actually think that Hitler is still a Christian after this evidence. This isn't an opinion piece. I mean, these are legal documents. Government documents. Let's get real. I mean, let's get real. Jerry Bergman, in his article, Was Adolf Hitler Christian? A Common Objection to Creationism, wrote, Hitler made it clear that he hated Christianity and was going to eliminate it when the war ended. He also wrote, according to Hitler, the Jesuits were swine and all of Christianity were Jewish Christianity. All of Christianity were Jewish Christianity. Get that? Which was comparable with Jewish Bolshevism. Hitler concluded that both were evil and both had to be destroyed. His reasoning was based on his belief that Christianity was an illegitimate Jewish child and, as a Jewish child, was swine like its parent that must be eradicated. Like Jew was the parent of Christianity, they both had to be eradicated. Hitler considered Christianity the invention of the Jewish Saul. That's the Apostle Paul, as Christians know him. Bergman also writes, quote, especially Darwinism, to create a major reason Hitler opposed Christianity was because Hitler saw Christianity and science as diametrically opposed to each other. He concluded science would win and the Christian church would eventually, in due time, be destroyed. Hitler even believed science was the creation of the German race. He believed science was the creation of the German race. Hitler was trying to use science, was trying to create a science utopia on Earth, and he made it absolutely clear that there'd be no place in the utopia for the Christian churches in his plans for the future of Germany. He realized that this was a long-term goal and was prepared to put off long-term ideology goals in favor of a short-term advantage. Also, according to Bergman, Hitler had to fight one battle at a time and elected to take on the fight with the churches in due time. The Christian church would be destroyed later, and for now it was needed. Only after the war would Germany be able to fully implement the final solution to the Christian problem. You still think Hitler wearing a cross made him a Christian? Get real. Let's get real. Bergman writes, although Hitler's killing machine murdered 5 million Jews and 7 million Christians, a little published fact that caused a Jewish historian, Max de Montt, to declare that the world blinded itself to the murder of Christians by Nazi Germany. How much more do I need to provide to show those that believe Hitler was a Christian that he was not? Any open-minded person would be convinced by now that they've heard this case. Jewish historian Max de Montt, who wrote Jews, God, and History, writes, if one believes the anti-Semitic, one should also believe the anti-Christian, for both had a single purpose. Hitler's aim was to eradicate all religious organizations within the state and to foster a return to paganism. This is from Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, as cited by William Niemöller in Struggle and Testimony of the Confessing Church, he said, and this is Einstein we're talking about, yes, the Albert Einstein that we know about. This is Einstein. Quote, lovers of freedom, when the Nazi Revolution came, I looked to the universities to defend it, knowing that they had always boasted of their devotion to the cause of truth. But no, the universities were immediately silenced. Then I looked at the great editors of the newspapers, whose flaming editorials in the days gone by had proclaimed their love of freedom. But they, like the universities, were silenced in a few short weeks. Only the church stood squarely across the path of Hitler's campaign of suppressing the truth. I never had any special interest in the church before, but now I feel a great affection and admiration for it, because the church alone had the courage and persistence to stand for intellectual and moral freedom. I'm forced to confess that what I once despised, I now praise unreservedly. He says the universities didn't speak against, they were afraid of the Nazis, newspapers afraid of the Nazis. Churches are the ones that stood up. And we can begin to see why, according to the previous source, 7 million died. Or the previous source or the source before the previous source, according to, I think it was Bergman. Yeah, Bergman wrote, altogether, Hitler's killing machine murdered 5 million Jews and 7 million Christians. A little published fact that caused Jewish historian Max de Montt to declare that the world blinded itself to the murder of Christians by Nazi Germany. Wow. If you take this into consideration with Hitler making the students, saying a prayer to him, with, denying the cross had any value, with, believing himself to be Lord, people persecuting Christians, making 12 commandments. You still think Hitler was a Christian? Erwin W. Lutzer writes, in Hitler's Cross, how the cross was used to promote the Nazi agenda. Quote, Hitler spoke of both Protestants and Catholics with contempt, convinced that all Christians would betray their God when they were forced to choose between the swastika and the cross. Do you really believe the masses will be Christian again? Nonsense, never again. That tale is finished. No one will listen to it again. But we can hasten matters. The parson will dig their own graves. They will betray their God to us. They will betray anything for the sakes of their own miserable jobs and incomes. Hitler said those words. I should repeat it. Hitler spoke to both Protestants and Catholics with contempt, convinced that all Christians would betray their God when they were forced to choose between the swastika and the cross. And this is what he said, quote, do you really believe that the masses will be Christian again? Nonsense, nonsense, never again. The tale was finished. No one will listen to it again, but we can hasten matters. The parsons will dig their own graves. They will betray their God to us. They'll betray anything for the sake of their miserable jobs and incomes. Ted Olson writes, and were the Nazis bad Christians or anti-Christians? And every once in a while, you'll come across someone talking about Hitler's Christianity. Sound familiar? There's a lot of atheists on YouTube who say Hitler was a Christian. So yes, this rings a bell. Every once in a while you come across someone talking about Hitler's Christianity. Fortunately, the Rutgers Journal of Law and Religion has come along to irrefutably correct these dumb comments. The journal is posting on its website previously unpublished documents from the Nuremberg War Crime Tribunal, and I've already referred to these, starting with a 120-page report, the Nazi master plan, the persecution of the Christian churches. Important leaders of the National Socialist Party would have liked to meet the situation church influence by complete extermination of Christianity and the substitution of a purely racial religion. The OSS said in 1945, according to the report, which was prepared by the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, a precursor of the CIA. Nuremberg Project editor Julie Seltzer Mandel tells the Philadelphia Inquirer, a lot of people say, I didn't realize they were trying to convert Christians to the Nazi philosophy. They wanted to eliminate the Jews altogether, but they were also looking to eliminate Christianity. Jonathan Sarfati, in his article, Nazis Plan to Exterminate Christianity, brings up the OSS documents and how the Nazis had a systematic plan to destroy Christianity. On January 11, 2002, the BBC Newsnet website, BBC, that's well known, BBC, the website, brings up these OSS files, which show the Nazis' plan to destroy Christianity in the article, Nazi Trial Documents Made Public. James Patrick Holding wrote the article, Was Hitler a Christian? In his article, he writes that Hitler forced an Aryan Jesus. Also, Hitler did not think the Old Testament, the book of Matthew, or the Pauline epistles had a place in the Bible because they had Jewish roots. I mean, take out the Old Testament, the book of Matthew, and the Pauline epistles. You take out a lot of the Bible. Holding writes, in a 1926 speech, Hitler stated that the goal of the Nazi Party was to translate the ideals of the Christ into. In a 1926 speech, Hitler stated that the goal of the Nazi Party was to translate the ideals of Christ into deeds and complete the work which Christ had begun but could not finish. Note that this statement not only elevates orthodoxy note that this statement not only elevates orthopraxy, but also implies a denial of the doctrine of the atonement, in which it is assumed that Christ's work was not finished on the cross. So I've already said, this is huge. The work was not finished. Remember, as I've already said, and sources have said, Hitler thought that Jesus led a revolt and was killed for that. He did not think that his death had any impact on atonement for our sins. Actually, according to Hitler, it was kind of derogatory in a way. His death was kind of derogatory in a way because it left unfinished work. Unfinished work that was left for Hitler himself to complete according to this statement. People, if you're listening, if you made it this far, how in the world, out of everything I've said, all the sources I've brought to the table, how in the world could anyone think of Hitler as a Christian? With an open mind, and if you're objective, you cannot say Hitler was a Christian. It's conclusive. Thank you for listening. It has been my honor to present this. Thank you.